Oh shit, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. Hello and welcome everyone to yet another video. This time we're going to be addressing G Guardians and people's general discontent and also agreement and various views on why you should or should not run more than 4 of them. My personal view is that you should run 4 if your deck does not contain too many amazing strides. So let's go over maybe one G zone that would run just 4, such as, for example, Extreme Battlers. So in this G zone we would see 4 Bustard, then we would see 4 of the Victor Stride, then 2 Victoplasma, maybe even 4, and then a Tri-Brute for some field control, a Sabreeze because everything depends on Generation Break, and now we already have 12 strides, meaning we have just 4 spaces left in our G zone for G Guardian. So let's say we'll put in 1 Blue Prison because, you know, sometimes we will have more than or equal to damage than our opponent, so we'll be guarding for 20k. Then we'll put in a couple of Dismals because obviously we want to protect our precious Sazandas and whatnot. And then we'll put in a Screw for, you know, those times when we need to just kind of get a bit more shield. So in this case, you would be running just the 4 G Guardians like a lot of people are doing, because they don't see the reasons why you should run more than 4. And in decks like this where the G zone is really tight and you have a lot of amazing strides, I perfectly agree. But now let's take a look at a G zone which is a bit less tight on space. So this would be the pre-GBTO7 Angel Feather G zone. Obviously it's going to change in just a few weeks, but this is just an example. There are some decks that don't have as many amazing strides. For example, if we look at Dimension Police after GBTO7, the only 2 real amazing stride that Cosmic Heroes would use, and I'm just saying Cosmic Heroes, would be X-Gallop and X-Tiger. Everything else is kind of just there, like X-Phoenix, you're only going to go in every now and then, X-Falcon, like please, X-Rogue, you don't really need to anymore, and then you got Sabreeze. So you have easily enough space for even 6 G Guardians, which is actually one of my favorite number of G Guardians. So let's look at Angel Feather before GBTO7. So we're running 4 Raphaels because we'll obviously need our heals. We run 3 no-seal strides because I think 4 is a bit too much and you're only going to be really going into 3. We run 1 of the, well, GB2 flippers technically, but she can be good in some situations, and Gavarili obviously run her. 1 Raziel's for the mass unflip, and we all know why Raziel is good. And then we run 1 Sabreeze because, again, we have Nurse Her Broken Heart and stuff like that that's really dependent on Generation Break. So now we have 10 total strides. There's no, like, maybe you could put in a Uriel instead of this, or maybe an extra no-seal, but you don't really need that. So here we have our 10 G units, and now let's say, oh, let's put in 2 Orifils, because most of the time you might get early rushed, and you know, you'll be at 4 damage pretty early, so you can start guarding for 20k already. Then, oh, let's put in a couple of Screws, because we do get a lot of hand advantage. We get a huge hand in this deck, so we can easily drop a couple of cards just to get an extra 10k shield. And then obviously we want to protect our Broken Hearts, so we want a couple of Dismals. So now in this G zone you can see we're running 6. Technically, you're only supposed to be G guarding 4 times, but there is an exception to that rule. This deck is not part of that exception, but I will show you one of the many decks that is an exception. So now, why would you run 6 in something like no-seal? Well, that's because you want to have the choice. If, let's say, we had to cut out, like, I don't know, these 2 just to put it down to 4, then what if I need a Screw for a second time? What if I've been making so much hand advantage and I need to, but then again I don't have enough guard to keep up, but Screw would save me. I just don't have a second one because I really used it up. What if I need, like, let's say, a second Orifil? Like, let's say I got early rushed and now I could be easily guarding stuff with exactly 20k if I didn't have a second one. So come on, let's put in 2. Like, okay, maybe in the game that you use 2 of them, you won't use all your Dismals, or you won't use all your Screws, but it's nice to have that choice. And a lot of the decks that run more than 4 G units, more than 4 G Guardians, is because their strides are either not as great, or you don't have as many great ones that you could run at big numbers like a Nova Grappler you would, and simply just want more choice for your G Guarding because you do depend on it in some decks. Not depend, but it is a very nice additional defensive technique. And like, for example, if we look at GBTO7, we have, for Dimensional Police, we already have 2 exclusive G Guardians for the clan. We have Excalibur and we have Enigman Patriot. And then if we look at something like Angel Feather, they already have their Rescue G Guardian and also the one from Fighters Collection. But then we look at something like Kagero, it already has the Fighters Collection one, it has the Griffin, and it also has the GR for Overlord. So there's already so many G Guardians. Like, are you sure you want to put in just one of each of the Kagero G Guardians and then one Dismal? And then you don't even have space for Screw? Okay, maybe you'll cut out the Fighters Collection one, but are you sure you don't want to run 2 Griffins? Are you only going to be nullifying 1 attack from your opponent? What if a worse one comes later? You know, it's all these things that make you just consider, why not run more than 4 G Guardians? There's another reason why you might run more than 6, even if you're not able to use all of them, and that's because of some strides that simply flip up your any G unit. So for example, X-Tiger, his skill is that when he attacks, you simply turn any card in your G-Zone face up to activate his effect. So it could be a G Guardian. So let's say you know you're not going to use more than 4 G Guardians, but you simply have 6 for the choice. Well, then you're like, okay, I'm sure I'm not going to use, like, let's say Dismal, or let's say we're definitely not going to use something like Screw. You know, it's just nice to have the choice of, let's say, going like, okay, I know I'm not going to use this G Guardian for this game because that's what the matchup that I'm facing is like. Therefore, I can flip it face up for the skill. You know, sometimes if you're running Sabreeze in the deck, you might flip up the Sabreeze because you didn't have the chance to use it, so you can flip it up for that. But generally, even if you have the oldest choice for G Guarding, if you know you won't use some of them because your deck is not able to use some of them, then you can simply just flip them up for some strides that flip any G unit face up. And there's more and more of them nowadays than there used to be before. Now, let's just quickly look at this one ruling for G Guardians that I think a lot of people tend to overlook. It says, when you have 4 face-up G Guardian cards in your G Zone, you cannot use G Guardian in that fight. So let's say we've used up, I'll just take 4 of these. Let's say we've used up 4 G Guardians by ditching every single one of our heals. Then that's it. We cannot use any more. That's it, because we have 4 face-up. However, there's a little exception to this rule because it makes it sound like you can only use 4 in the game and that's it. But there's an exception in decks which can recycle cards from your drop zone. There's a lot of them. Anything that runs Legion, Blade Wings, Gear Chronicles, so many decks. Anything that can recycle stuff, at least triggers, from the drop zone back to the deck can do this. So let's say I'm playing something like Metalborgs, which has the Legion ability. I've already used up 3 of my G Guardians, therefore 3 of my heals are already in the drop zone, and I have 1 in hand, so I could technically go for my 4th one. However, I can choose to Legion back the heal triggers. So let's say we Legion, and we put back our heals, and then throughout the course of the game, you know, at some point I'll probably get a couple of them into my hand. If I don't, no biggies, but just for this situation, let's assume that we get 3 of them into our hand. So we have 3 face up, but we don't have 4, meaning that if we still have 3, we can still use G Guardians. So let's say our opponent is attacking us with a really high powered attack. So what we can easily do is, because we have 3 face up G Guardians, we don't have 4 exactly. So if we don't have 4, we can still use them. So let's say I ditch a heal to activate a G Guardian. Okay, so let's say I guard with a Dismal. And now, because I still, in my G Zone, I would only have 3 face up still, because this does not go back to the G Zone until the battle is over. So then I can ditch another one, guard with it as well, and ditch another heal, and guard with it as well. And you know, for Screw, ditch another one. So because I only had 3 face up in my G Zone, I could keep using them. So now obviously I've used up all 6 that I'm running. So you can only do this in decks that can recycle back cards, especially, you know, triggers, because obviously normally if you cannot recycle, you can only use them 4 times, because that's how many possible you can draw into a game. Obviously this scenario is not very likely, but it's not 0% chance. There is a possibility this could happen to you in a game if you run something that recycles, whether it's Blade Wings or it's Gear Chronicle now thanks to Uru, or if it's a Legion build, you know. So this is another one of the reasons why you can actually run 6, because you can potentially use all 6. If you draw into another heal, for example, you could use even 7. Like, it's pretty crazy, because the ruling says that you can only use them when you have 4 face up in the G Zone, and because these stay on the Guardian Circle until you're done with the attack or with the battle, therefore you can still keep using them as long as you have 3 face up. So all in all, G Guardians are very, very good to the game, and I'm very happy that they added them in. And this is just some of the pros why you should probably consider running more than 4. If your deck can afford it, obviously, because as we saw in the Mecha Battler or Extreme Battler G Zone, it can only afford to run 4 because there's so many good strides in that deck. as the clans that we have in the game keep getting better and better strides, the space for G Guardians is going to get smaller, and then they'll probably go down to 4 for a lot of decks. But now, there's still some clans that don't have that many amazing strides, so they can afford to run more than 4. So before you know, see somebody's build and start screaming at them, why are you running more than 4 G Guardians, maybe consider some of these points. Obviously, if you're something like Gear Chronicle, you can also use the stand trigger or the stride to flip some G units back face down, and then you can use the G Guardians even more. But those cards aren't exactly run nowadays, so I mean you can, but that's not exactly recommended. But that's pretty much the last point I had to make. So that's pretty much it for me today. I hope that I kind of got this message across that you should you should not look down on people that run more than 4 G Guardians. I've seen a lot of people get hate for running more than 4 G Guardians, and when we look at tournament deck lists, for example, from Japan, they often top with more than 4, and that's perfectly understandable. So that's pretty much all I had to say for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.